part 3 of beginning figure drawing. So today what we're going to talk about is our center of gravity and foreshortening. So let's get started. Center of gravity. This is what we talk about when we talk about how the weight of the body is distributed. So let's think about it. Right now, as I stand, and I am balanced on both feet, they're flat on the ground, my center of gravity is from my head straight down. Okay? When I shift my body, then my center of gravity shifts as well. And so now, from my head to my foot, so where my foot is resting most of the weight, okay? You can also think about it in terms of a right triangle. So let's say that I take my body and I bend it like so. Where is that weight now? I can feel the weight on my legs, but I also feel it kind of where my head is. So if I take my head and I take a line straight down to the floor and then to my feet, that gives you the area or space where that center of gravity is. How does that help? Well, knowing that you have that center of gravity area will help you hopefully avoid drawing your figures so they look like they're fixing to fall over. Right now I'm balanced, but if I keep going and keep going and going, eventually I'm going to fall, right? And sometimes we draw our figures so it looks like they're leaning and they aren't well grounded. The next thing I would like to talk to you about is foreshortening. So, and you're looking straight at me, I lift my arm up like so, you see that my arm, we already know that it's about 3.5 heads long for an average adult, right? But as I move this arm in front like so, now how long do you think my arm is in your viewpoint? My arm is still 3.5 heads long, but my view has shortened it. That's called foreshortening. And we need to figure out how much shorter that is in my view. Again, you can relate what you see to either the width or the length of your head and see where it measures up, right? So now what I want to do for you is what we call a bounding box exercise. And that's if I take the pose, whatever pose that might be, and if you create a bounding box from all of the most, how do I say this, the furthest points on this figure. So my fingertip would be on the top of my head, my elbow sticking out a little bit, and of course my foot. And that's going to give you a shape. You can draw that shape first and then try to fit the figure in it, and sometimes that's helpful as an exercise. So especially when we have foreshortening. So let's see if I can't give you some foreshortening and we'll talk about it. Let's look at this chair here. This chair. And now I've got a lot of foreshortening. My arms are kind of coming out at you. My body is leaned forward. What would be the bounding box for that? Let's see what it would look like if I did it to the side. So maybe we have something like this. What would that bounding box look like? What I want you to do is take a look at the image I'm going to show you see if you can figure out what that bounding box looks like. Draw the box first, and then try to draw a gesture drawing inside that box to fit that box, and see what happens as one of your exercises. I am going to demonstrate for you how to use construction lines to make your bounding box, and then I'll go ahead and demonstrate the entire process for you. Before I begin, the first thing I want to establish is the center of gravity, which I've kind of already done here on this image. Starting with her head, if you go straight down, the point between her 2 feet here, okay, that basically gives you her center of gravity. And if I pull that over and make my right triangle like so, then you can see that most of that weight then is going to be right in here, all right, because she's leaned forward. Now, that said, the next thing I want to establish before I begin is how tall is this entire drawing going to be in relationship to her head size. So I'm going to measure, and I will measure from the top of her head to the bottom of her chin. I've got a little piece of paper here, and if I pull that down, I'm going to make a little dot, pull that down, and pull it down again. Let me do it on this side so that you can see better. Go this way, there's my dot, and she is 4 heads high. Well, I want to draw a little bit bigger on my sheet of paper, so I'm going to make it so that she's 1.5 heads on this sheet of paper. Before I do that, I'm going to show you another way to figure this. So if I come through and make my grid, so I want 8 heads here, just so that we can talk this through. We know that the average adult figure is generally 7.5 heads, but we draw it to be 8, right? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and one more makes 8. Awesome. Okay, so that gives me this grid line here of what she would look like if she was standing completely tall. So let's say that you don't have a photograph you're working from a live model. You're going to have to do a little ciphering in your head to figure this out. So the first thing that I notice is that from the bottom of her foot to her hip right here, that's 1 head, okay? Because we know that from her knee to the bottom of her foot is 2 heads high. And that's right at me, so, but it's leaned a little bit. We have really and truly deleted or gotten rid of this thigh area. Well, that right there, that's 2 heads. But not only that, that would be a deletion if she was like bent at a 90-degree angle and just sitting straight. But she's also bent so that it comes up. All right, so that knee is going past her hip here. So there's another head. There's 3 heads right there that we have totally deleted. So 8 minus 3 is 5 heads, right? But if I look at her, if she was straight up and down from here to here, and that was 4 heads, now I'm leaned. We can delete a head just because of her leaning, and that's where the other deletion comes. So that's kind of like the foreshortening, because her body is foreshortened towards you a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a mark right here, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and a mark right here. I know that my bounding box has to be that big. That's going to help me quite a bit. I can even come over and make a real quick little mark right in here for this first head, all right, because I know that that's where that that hip is. I'm going to use a red crayon to show you construction lines. So what I'm doing is I'm placing the crayon at the angle that she is. If you are on the screen, you can do the same thing. You would have it, let's see if I can make this work. Let's see. So if I had this up in front of me, okay, I would have it like this, and then when I brought it down to my paper, you're going to have to tilt your hand a little bit, but you're still in that same angle, okay, and then you'd lay it down on your paper. So come over here, put it over here, and make my mark. Make my mark. Now, if I use a simple box, you'll notice that her feet are going to come over the box line a little bit, and that's okay. Otherwise, I would have to do another line here and one here, and I don't want to make it too complicated. So I'm going to do just this line here. Come over here, like so, and then I have this line right here, like so. And when I bring that over, it's going to be right here. There's my bounding box. Now I can do my gesture line. The next thing I want to talk to you about is how do you go about practicing figure drawing. And maybe you don't want people to know you're figure drawing, right? You don't want to go out in public and say, hey, would you model for me real quick? And maybe because of social distancing right now, you don't have friends that you can connect with and have them model for you. Your parents might be too busy. Whatever the case may be, how can you practice? Well, I'm going to give you a little trick that I've used in the past for our students doing at-home practice. And it's just that, it's practice. Because you never really want to borrow from the internet for your real work. You want your own original resources. But for practice, if you want to find figures in motion, in those really unusual poses, you would go to, let's say, one of the video networks like YouTube, right? And look for things that you know where people are going to be moving. Look for gymnastics videos. Look for dance videos. The Lindy, oh, that's a fun one. So anything, circus, okay? The trapeze artists. Anything of that nature where the body is in motion.
For more practice on figure drawing, one of the best things you can do is go to YouTube and search out YouTube videos that have lots of motion in them. Exercise videos, gymnastic videos, dance videos. The list is endless. And then once you find the video that you want, so I've got an example here, what you'll do is you let it load, let it play. So it's going to play for a while until you see something that you like. And then you can stop it. And then you can also take, You can take it and just fast forward very slowly until you find a pose you think might be fun to draw. So, let's say that we have some interesting poses here. Alright, so let's say I wanted to do that pose right there. Now assume that it's also the right direction. But you've stopped it, you can see it, and now you can sit there and draw it, find another pose, draw it, and get lots of practice in on the movement of the body.